Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. With us today we have Halil Sadiq from City of London, Paul Clark from Esri, Duncan Hill from Europa Technologies, and my colleague Amanda Barr from Ordnance Survey. Paul and Halil will be presenting on how Esri technology and OS data, they've supported the work they are undertaking to support COVID-19 initiatives, specifically the challenge of social distancing in urban areas. Duncan will look at how Europa Technologies is providing easy access to quality mapping for Great Britain and beyond in the fight against COVID-19. And now I will pass you over to Paul.
Thank you, Stacey. Well, first of all, thank you to Ordnance Survey for inviting Esri and myself to speak. My name is Paul Clark. I lead the government practice at Esri in the UK. Since the emergence of COVID-19 and throughout the response, Esri have worked with customers across the UK in many sectors, actually, utilities, defence, in some commercial organisation, in the police, and especially in government. I think it's fair to say I've been truly inspired by how quickly our customers have adapted and applied the use of Esri tools in combination with Ordnance Survey data in their response. So initially, our customers responded quickly in the following ways. First of all, we start to help some of the large organisations, Public Health England, Wales, and in Scotland, with reporting statistics. We also helped many of our customers with adapting to home working, moving licensing around, getting them into an online environment and making sure that they could still carry out their work. Some of our customers wanted to use our technology to communicate things around what the measures and what the lockdown meant for people, and also perhaps where they could go and take exercises in the middle bottom example from Hampshire County Council. But very quickly, we saw the use of GIS becoming sort of operationalised and moved into frontline use, supporting things such as dashboarding for senior executives or to support volunteer programmes. And at the heart of everything that we've seen in government, it's been about making sure that the response is appropriate and that no one gets left behind. So I wanted to take a minute now just to walk you through just a couple of quick examples of some customers who have used GI and have used OS data in combination in different ways to make sure they've been able to provide their service. So this first example is from Stirling Council, and they decided that they wouldn't provide meal vouchers for their free school meal recipients, but instead they would actually provide a hot meal to those addresses. So they used a combination of routing, mapping and survey techniques in order to make sure that that was able to be carried out effectively. Our colleagues in Gwynedd in North Wales, it was really interesting what they did, because they moved their social care team out of the offices and then redistricted the social care workers around where they lived. So they provided services local to where they live for their service users. That was an interesting, and they carried that out very swiftly, again, to make sure that their service users were well supported. In this example from Wigan Council, we see all the supermarkets and food outlets are mapped into the various ward areas of the council. And here they were organising volunteer teams around taking food and making sure that they got to the addresses nearby, again, supporting those people that couldn't leave their homes. And this example I find fascinating, actually, because Lancaster City Council, they started to receive lots of information from other parts of the public sector and indeed utilities. They were receiving really address information about where vulnerable people were, and that address detail was coming into them in patchy quality, incomplete. And what they did was they took all of that information, they combined with Microsoft Flows, and they effectively created a kind of a single address, cleansed address data set that they were then able to use as a corporate resource and serve back to those other organisations that provided them with some of that data. So you can see in all of these cases, our customers up and down the country have used essential underlying intelligence in the Ordnance Survey mapping and combined them with Esri tools to make sure that their response is effective. And again, as I said, nobody got left behind. But of course, we're in a continually changing and dynamic situation. And as we continue to work with our customers, new needs are emerging. In fact, on the 26th, I'm running a webinar at Esri to cover how organisations will start to prepare and plan for economic recovery. And again, using demographic, mapping, statistical, geospatial data to aid in that. You can look up at Esri events page, you'll see the webinar there, it's on the 26th, and you can register there, you'd be very welcome. In terms of what we've seen very recently is an easing of the lockdown, and that's demanded a certain response, particularly in urban areas, to maintain social distancing. So we were obviously working with a number of customers up and down the country, and one of those examples stood out for us, and that was the City of London, who were kind of pioneering in their work to start looking at social distancing in their area. And I want to hand over now to Halil Sadiq at the City of London Corporation, who's going to take us through what he's done so far. Halil, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, my name is Halil Sadiq. I am the GIS developer here at the City of London, and today I'm going to talk about how we identified pavement widths using OS Master Map in this time of social distancing. The task that I was given was to identify the widths of the pavements within the City of London to help facilitate social distancing when lockdown measures ease. We wanted to identify where the bottlenecks were within the pavement network in the city, which would help the transportation management team make decisions regarding the reallocation of carriageway space for walking, queuing, and cycling. Just a bit of background on the City of London. We are in the heart of London, so we are that small red blob. We are quite small area-wise, only 1.18 square miles. We are also known as a square mile. Our resident population is small, around 8,000 people, primarily situated in the north of the city within the Barbican estate, with around another 1,000 residents who own a second home. Our pre-COVID everyday working population was approximately 520,000 people. So there are many challenges with so many people in such a small space. Some of our road network is very, very old, dating back to the medieval times. The data that was used was OS Master Map, using the roadside features within it. There isn't a pavement network layer to get the center lines of the pavements. So because of that, we use our elementary street units layer from the local street gazetteer. In terms of tools, we used ArcGIS Desktop, and we also wrote code in Python to automate the whole process. The first step was to take our ESU layer and create a line feature at 1% intervals of the total length of each ESU. We did this because we wanted granularity within the dataset. Each polyline was set at 20 meters in each direction and at right angles. This was done because we have wide roads, so we wanted to make sure that we covered the front and backs of the pavements. We did have to do a bit of trial and error with regards to the right angle polylines. When we initially ran the code, we started with 5 meter polyline lengths, but as you can see from the map, it only touched the front of the pavements. Increasing it to 10 meters seemed better. However, when we looked at the rest of the city, it still didn't cover all of the front and backs of the pavements. The sweet spot that we found was 20 meters, and that was just right. If we went any further than that, it would cause overlaps with parallel pavements. Corners were an issue. Because we use ESUs, the angles of the polylines didn't fully allow the capturing of the whole corners, which meant that gaps were found in some corners, as shown. Also, the length of the polyline was just short on some places, which meant that they could not be captured correctly, as shown in this example with the selected records. Using center lines for each pavement polygons could be a solution to this. The second step was to run the ArcGIS intersect tool. The master map layer was set to only show the roadside features using the definition query desk group is equal to roadside. The resulting layer was a multi-point layer which identified the lines that intersected master map. The next step was to go through each multi-point feature and to match it up to its corresponding point and then generate a polyline between the two. If we zoom in, we can see the granularity that we required. And the final step was to symbolize the data using the shape.length field, which was created automatically. We also had to make sure that the symbol levels were also set so that the worst case, i.e. in red, were always shown above the orange and green features. This was the final output from our analysis. It's not perfect, but it's better than what we had previously, which was nothing. Using the traffic signal colors, it has given the transportation management team the ability to see where there are potential bottleneck issues, what roads could be closed to reallocate the space for pedestrians and cyclists, or changing its operation, for example, switching to a one-way system. Our next steps will be to include all the paths and alleyways within the City of London, which were not included in this first run of analysis. We will want to take into account the street furniture, for example, benches, lampposts, bollards, litter bins, etc., as that will have an impact on the widths. We are going to explore creating a pavement network, which should potentially fix the corner issue and capture them all. The script that we created is going to be optimized and refined to update the layer whenever we receive master map updates. And we are going to look at keeping a history of the data so that we can track changes over time. So even though this piece of work was related to the coronavirus, it has also opened strands of work in terms of how transportation is planned in the future within the City of London. That's it from me. Thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Paul from Esri UK.
Thank you, Neil. That was great. And I understand that you've scripted this. So in fact, those you would be willing to make those scripts available to other people if indeed they wanted them. Is
Absolutely.
that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's really great, and it's a really great example. And we at Esri realised that it's not just the City of London that does this, but loads of other local authorities do this as well. So Esri have created now a similar pavement data set, which we are making available for free to customers to run alongside the OS Mapping for Emergencies program. So whilst the OS program is free, our pavement data service will be free as well, and you can find that on the Esri marketplace. Thanks again to Halil, and I'll pass back to Stacey. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Halil. That sounds absolutely great. Now I will pass you over to Duncan.
Thank you, Stacey, and good morning, everyone. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. My name's Duncan Hill from Europa Technologies, and I'd like to just give you a brief overview of the resources that we're making available to help combat the COVID-19 pandemic. So just in case any of you haven't heard of Europa Technologies before, we are a pioneer of location intelligence solutions for a wide variety of different market sectors. In fact, it's our 30th anniversary this year, and during that time, we've worked with many leading organizations, both within the UK and indeed around the world. I'm pleased to say we're a long-standing partner of Ordnance Survey, and since 2010, we've had a very strong focus on making OS data available as a service so that you can use it directly in your applications, something that I'll be talking about some more today. In addition, though, we also remain a supplier of global map data and provide this to our clients around the world to help deliver location intelligence applications, organizations like Google, missions of the United Nations, and various governments as well. So, what resources are we making available to help battle the pandemic? Well, I'm pleased to confirm, as you may have seen already, that we're making our Via Europa web services available. These provide access to the Ordnance Survey premium data that you'll no doubt already be aware has been made available under Ordnance Survey's Mapping for Emergencies programme. We're delighted that Ordnance Survey has taken this step, and we thank them again today. So what does that mean for you? Well, Via Europa will be made available to qualifying organisations free of service fees and OS licence fees through until the 30th of September. Additionally, we're also making our own global map data available, which of course does not go to the fantastic level of detail that we see here in GB in the OS data, but is much more suitable for tracking the pandemic at a macro level internationally. I thought it would be useful just to show some examples of what the Via Europa web services actually look like. Many of you will already be familiar with the range of Ordnance Survey datasets, and indeed we provide access to virtually all of those through the Via Europa service platform. I've just picked out a few examples to give you a feel for what's included here today. So here we see our standard base map. In fact, this is probably one of the most popular services that we provide. For those of you that are technically minded, this is delivered as a web map tile service, a WMTS, but essentially what we're delivering is a context-sensitive base map that's been designed to be useful in a broad range of different applications. The cartography has been carefully designed so that it's accessible for a broad range of different users, including those like me, in fact, with some form of colour vision deficiency. However, as you will see now on the next slide, we also offer a grayscale alternative. So this is designed to be even more muted so that you can overlay your own layers on top of the base map in colour, and they will really stand out. In fact, we can see an example of this on the next slide, where I have created a simple map overlaying some of the OS green space data, another OS dataset that we support. Here, the master map version of green space, and that's being delivered as a WFS or web feature service layer. What's significant about that is that actually we can interact with that. So again, for those of you that are technically minded, this is a vector feature layer, and there are polygons within that, and we can use those within our analysis, for example, point-in polygon type queries. So if we advance to the next slide, we can see I've added another layer. This is actually the point data from AddressBase Plus in this example, again being consumed as a WFS layer into our application. Now, I should add that with all of these layers that I am showing here, those have been consumed just through a simple URL, pointing my application to those service endpoints. There's no need to download the data in advance. Yes, you do need a web connection, but it just consumes the data that it needs. And this is very easy to set up. And once you've pointed your application at these endpoints, it's then very easy to use. So just a simple example there of how we can display a range of different OS datasets. So why might you want to use this in your fight against the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, I'm pleased to confirm it works with a broad range of different technologies. Many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with technologies like Esri, as we've heard about already today, and also others as well, such as MapInfo, CADCorp, and QGIS. There are also many web mapping APIs, such as Bing Maps and Google Maps, of course, and also OpenLayers and Leaflet. Via Europa works with all of these. It delivers access to the very latest content from Ordnance Survey for anywhere in GB. So we take every single OS update, in some cases every 6 weeks, process those and publish those out so that our clients and users always see the very latest data. I mentioned the cartography and the fact that these services are very much ready to use. This makes them ideal for remote working, as you don't need to download large volumes of data in advance. These services are already widely used and relied upon by organisations such as the emergency services sector, local and national government, and indeed the whole of the public sector in Scotland. So I'd like to just move on now to talk a little about outside of GB. I mentioned earlier that we are also making our global map data available. This is actually just a page from our website that just gives an indication of the types of information that are included within these products. So, of course, as you might expect, we have political boundaries, also administrative borders for countries around the world. In fact, first level admins for every country that uses those, and many second level admins as well. And there's also a gazetteer of over 1.5 million places as well that can be very useful. So let's take a look at what this content actually looks like. So here I've just taken a few examples just to give you a feel for the mapping. As I mentioned, it's very much at the macro level, but I think quite useful when it comes to looking at a strategic overview for something like the data relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here we're looking at San Francisco. If we advance to the next slide, here we can see similar content for Dubai and for Cairo and Tokyo. So hopefully that gives you a feel for the types of information that is contained within this data. Of course, there are many different maps available online. What we are doing here is making this data available for you to use in your desktop GIS analysis, actually making the raw data available to you so that you can use that as you need to in your response to the pandemic. I should also add that we do have very strong multilingual support with support for over 20 different languages. So if you are working with different agencies and organizations internationally and want to present the maps using exonyms, so foreign place names, then that's something that is also possible. In this example, I've actually taken some of the Expo content that we include with the global data, in this case, scheduled flights, and just picked out those that are inbound into London Heathrow, just as another example of how this data could be visualized and to give you a feel for perhaps the type of analysis that you might be able to carry out yourselves. Lastly, I just wanted to wrap up with some resources that might be useful to you after the webinar. You'll find further information on the Via Europa web services on our website. And indeed, again, the global data products are also covered in detail on the website as well, explaining in detail exactly what's included in each of those. However, if you do have any questions or concerns at all, please do get in touch. We're a very friendly team and are more than happy to help. Please do feel free to get in touch with me either after the webinar today or indeed later on, and I'll be more than happy to help. But thank you again to Ordnance Survey for their Mapping for Emergencies program and indeed for arranging the call today.
Thank you, Duncan. That was great. We've had a couple of questions come in. The first one is for Halil. Some roads and pavements are generalised for width depending on whether urban or rural. How did this impact the analysis?
That's a very good question. Get back to you on that.
Okay, that question was from James Cutler. There's another question for you as well from Chris Buckmaster. He's really interested in your script, and do you have any plans to make this available for other Esri users?
Absolutely. So I'm currently optimizing the script. If he sends us an email to gis@cityoflondon.gov.uk, I can ping him a copy and he can try it.
Great. Thank you very much. Duncan, I think this is one for you. Do you limit WFS to 100 features per query?
No, we don't. We do have an internal limit, but it's much higher than that. From memory, I believe it's 20,000 features are returned per query. So we're trying to make the services as useful as possible to our users.
Thank you. We don't seem to have any more questions. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the session useful. Also, thank you to Halil, Duncan and Paul for presenting.